All right, well, let's talk about some of that reality with regards to oil. We can put this up on the screen. Just incredible scenes that are unfolding across the region as oil facilities and tankers are being struck by Iran. So this first one here, you can see a tanker on fire. This is in the Persian Gulf tonight. Here is an oil facility that was also struck. And you can see, just fires everywhere. Here's a picture. So this is the Strait of Hormuz right there. That's where Trump says, just go ahead, just brave it. This is the U.S. flag tanker. This is the first time a U.S. flag tanker has been struck. This is near Iraq. There were a couple of oil tankers that were struck near Iraq. This is another tanker that is on fire. You can see the damage that was sustained here. And so, in terms of here's someone posted this with, this is what it looks like when Trump tells you to go ahead and be brave.
I mean, these poor guys, these are some Thai oil tanker, a Thai flagship, they have no idea.
Very difficult life. It's not their choice because it's not like they can just be like, hey, boss, I'm not down for this. So they're being, brought into this conflict. And, these are civilians who are just trying to do a job. This is like the global working class, truly. And now they're being attacked. Some of them are being injured. Some of them are losing their lives in these attacks. And the Navy had originally said, I think Trump had originally announced, or Hegseth, one of them had announced, like, oh, the Navy is going to escort these tankers through to make sure that they're safe. And then they immediately were like, well, we actually can't do that. They're getting tons of requests to do that. From these companies that want to be able to, this is, how they earn their living. And the Navy has said, no, it's too dangerous because how can you accomplish this? The Strait of Hormuz has now been mined. We don't know how many, we don't know where they are, but that is an incredible risk. And obviously, they're continuing to be able to strike these blows in spite of Trump telling us that, oh, we've won and they're defeated and they have no ability to project any more power and this thing's just about over. They're having their way there in the Strait of Hormuz. They're able to do and operate and do whatever they want to do. Early on, just based on the threats from Iran, the insurers had effectively sort of pulled out, spike prices to the point of being prohibitive. Now, our government came in and said, don't worry, we'll insure you. But who is going to take this risk? Who is going to look at these images and sign up and say, yeah, I want to do this. I want to risk, not only the lives of these individuals, but it's a lot of money that these ships are, these tankers are, and a lot of money on board as well.
Yeah, no, it is so bad that these attacks actually are what really sent some of the oil prices going up again last night, somewhere around $90 a barrel. Brent, I believe, is actually higher, somewhere near 100. Again, just to translate, I think if crude goes to 100, it will be roughly $4 a gallon.
Yeah.
In our
we
national
set at $93
average.
Right now.
Right, so we're at 93. So maybe 3. It depends, obviously, where you live, whether we're going to do gas taxes. They've currently, or a gas tax relief, Jones Act. There's a lot of other stuff which actually could further reduce the price. But as of right now, that's roughly where things are going. Highest gas prices we've seen under Donald Trump's presidency. We should, of course, also note the mines that Ryan and Emily covered. Some 10 mines, according to the U.S. intelligence community so far, been laid in the Straits of Hormuz, and they have thousands of ships, or boats, small craft, which just have 2 mines or something you could just float out into the middle of the Straits of Hormuz, which still have their capability. The U.S. said they're only destroyed 16 of those boats now so far. The estimate, again, literally is like thousands of some sort of small craft, many of which are hidden in tunnels and in bunkers. But here is what Donald Trump said about braving the Straits of Hormuz and the mines. Let's take a listen.
Are you talking to the CEOs of various oil companies, encouraging them to use the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I think they should. I think they should. I think they should use it. In my opinion, look, we took out just about all of their mine ships in one night. We're up to boat number 60. I didn't realize that big a Navy.
Treasury Department buy oil futures as a means to keep the oil prices down or bring the oil prices down.
Well, we're going to be in very good shape. You see what's happening. They are pretty much at the end of the line. Doesn't mean we're going to end it immediately, but they've got no Navy, they've got no Air Force, they've got no anti-air traffic, anything. They have no systems of control. We're just riding free range over that country. and now we're going to look very strongly at the Straits. The Straits are in great shape. We've knocked out all of their boats. They have some missiles, but not very many.
Wow.
At the exact moment he was saying that, U.S. flagship was getting attacked in the Persian
Straits
Gulf.
are in
At the exact same moment.
Straits are in great shape.
No, they're shut down. They're completely shut down. There's nothing moving through there except what Iran wants to move through there. All of that coastline, I was already seeing this morning. What do you think I'm reading? Reports, contingency plans for taking over the Straits would require U.S. securing the coastline. So it's like all the coastline on the Straits of Hormuz, U.S. troops have to go there. If they're there, then you got to make sure that they don't get attacked from the rear guard, which means what? A large ground force. You can't bomb your way out of this, as we're going to talk about with Professor Pape.
Yeah, and if you do just try to send those Navy escort, they're sitting ducks.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that's why they can't do it. And that's why, coincidentally, I mean, this is one of the many reasons why the military did not want this war. I mean, Bibi said himself, he has been dreaming of this war for 40 years. And we have had, in that time period, many American presidents who were extremely pro-Israel, who did many things that Israel wanted them to do and were on their side through thick and thin. But when it came to this war with Iran, those presidents said that would be an idiotic move. It would be dangerous. It would be extraordinarily risky. We cannot do it. It took till this president and whatever is going on with him and his sugar high after Venezuela and, his foolishness to actually get us into this thing, because the military knew that this would be a disaster, and this is one of many reasons why. This is extraordinary too, so let's put B3 up on the screen. So originally, Trump had actually been opposed to any sort of strategic petroleum release. He has now completely done a 180 on that, not only in terms of our own reserves, but in terms of global reserves. The IEA has announced their largest ever oil release from global strategic reserves. They've decided to release 400 million barrels in an attempt to prevent supply disruptions and tame crude prices. So you have that. You have an announcement about a release from our own strategic petroleum reserve. And so as that is happening, at the same time, we still have oil prices going up. That is an extraordinary situation. Okay, what this was meant to do was to keep those oil prices low, to calm the markets, to bring the price back down, or at least maintain its position. That has not succeeded. That has failed. Why? Because of exactly the scenes that we just showed you. Because of these tankers on fire, right near Iraq in the Persian Gulf. And people are looking at that and saying, you can release all of the reserve that you want to. It is not going to be sufficient to deal with the disruption that we are seeing in the Persian Gulf. So the fact that you have this release and you still have oil prices ticking up and up and up, that tells you the markets are starting to figure out this is a dire situation. To me, they're still underestimating just how bad things are at this point. But, that's the combination of those two news stories is highly significant.
They still have faith that they're going to figure this thing out. And they just don't seem to understand that we are in it now, unless Iran decides that they don't want to do it anymore. And for them not to do it anymore, well, we are going to have to give them an extraordinary amount of concessions. This is why, as he said, we'll talk about with Professor Pape, all logic, all internal logic. It would take one of the most supreme acts of heroism of Donald Trump's entire life to say, I'm done. I'm done. Do you have any idea, though, how difficult that is? The troops are out there. Everyone, he would be ridiculed. I won't do it because even though I'm furious about the war, I would do the fake thing. I'll go on television and be like, thank you, you're the most courageous president ever, to try and do so. But most people won't. They'll ridicule him, rightfully so, if we're being honest, about dragging us into this as a disaster. All of his advisors are too afraid to actually tell him that this is bad. And so all logic, it's just like Vietnam. The easiest thing to do, or Afghanistan or Iraq, what's the easiest thing to do? Send in more troops, escalate more, do more, save face. Got it, was peace with honor, can't withdraw. Even though it all ends up at the same place, Saigon on a helicopter in 1975. You can see exactly how this is all going to go, except you just waste billions of dollars, lives in the process. That's the real tragedy of it. I do want to talk about fertilizer. We have B5 here. It's a farmer who was just interviewed talking about the spike in fertilizer prices, and I'll talk a little bit more on the other side. Let's take a listen.
Those that need to buy are hurting pretty bad because we've had this huge jump in fertilizer prices because of this conflict. And, with only about 30% of fertilizer coming through the Strait of Hormuz, that's, if you divide that out per day, that's about 0.09% of the world's fertilizer coming through there. And even if the U.S. only uses 30% of that, which I think is probably a really high number, that's 0.03% and per day. So we've only been in conflict for nearly 12 days here, and our fertilizer costs have jumped nearly 77%.
So he's talking there about the price spike. So I recently listened, I highly recommend it. Odd Lots, friend Joe Weisenthal, they just did an episode on fertilizer. So I did, obviously not a fertilizer expert or anything. We have no fertilizer strategic reserve like we do with oil. A huge portion of it moves through the Straits of Hormuz. Apparently urea, the way that it's grown or something like that has to be done next to these natural gas plants. And so it's naturally from Russia and or the Middle East. So that's a natural place for it to be grown. Right now is planting season. So right now is when the fertilizer is apparently needed the most. Already the spot price, I think, of urea and corn is like near its all-time high. If you look at those two things, the price spike for the farmers here will eventually be passed on to us as consumers in the form of groceries and inputs for all these different goods. But the worst part actually is for the developing world, because this is an outright massive shortage. That shortage will mean that many developing countries, as we've seen now with Bangladesh or India, many countries which are poor, can't afford some of the higher oil prices or fertilizer. They just won't buy it, which means low crop yield, which means potential famine, or like they will have to declare a state of emergency and buy food from some other country, tap into debt. IMF could get involved. Like you have the World Food Program, like it's a serious, serious crisis. And that is something I had never thought about, really even seen for the movement through the Straits of Hormuz. And the other problem for fertilizer is that oil is the number one concern. So even when it does reopen, as Rory has told us, that it'll take a couple months just to go back to normal. Well, oil is going to get first priority, which means the fertilizer will continue to be back behind that. And there's all this stuff about how you can't really store it, like it doesn't store very well for a couple of months. So we really could be in a serious shortage. It's something I'd never considered, but it really, this could actually be really bad.
It reminds very much both of the Ukraine war and also of COVID, where all of these sorts of things that people didn't think of, including not just us, but experts who run the global economy, didn't think of the ways that these problems would compound and there would be all sorts of unintended consequences, and that it wouldn't be just like, okay, we're open again, so everything's all good. That there would be months and years of getting back to some semblance of quote unquote normal, because our system, our global economic system, is built in a very fragile way. That has been sort of the basis of neoliberalism. You mentioned helium. Someone on Twitter is saying, Barron Investment says, good piece on Bloomberg Intelligence. And for those with helium exposure, Qatar's shutdown of LNG production has taken about a third of global helium production offline, affecting chip makers who rely on helium for semiconductor manufacturing. Helium has no viable substitute in the chip manufacturing process. No other source can immediately replace Qatar's supply. Helium containers already filled before the war remain stranded. If the disruption persists, helium shortages could force chip makers to deprioritize lower margin product lines, reinforcing existing allocation toward AI memory, deepening an already severe memory shortage. So yet another unintended consequences that, certainly no one in this idiotic administration has thought of. I mean, they didn't even think about the oil thing, which is like the most obvious thing that you could ever think of with a war in the Middle East. And they had not even planned for that because Trump was so high on his own supply. He genuinely thought that if he just murdered the Ayatollah and hit Iran hard, that the whole thing could be all wrapped up in a mission accomplished banner. And now here we are, and they have no idea what to do. Lastly, I mentioned this before, but I just think this is incredible. Put B6 up on the screen. So while oil shipping through the Strait of Hormuz is completely closed for us or any of our allies, Iran is still doing what they want to do. They've actually increased the amount of oil exports that they have been able to ship out, largely to China. So, the whole cope around, this is all about hurting China, blah, blah, blah. First of all, Iranian oil is not even a really large percentage of China's energy doesn't meet a large percentage of China's energy requirements. Overall, it's like 1% of the energy that China consumes. China itself is a large oil producer. They've also invested heavily in renewable energy, et cetera, et cetera. But in any case, even if they were, even if this was a big problem for them, apparently they're still getting what they need from Iran in terms of their energy needs. So just an incredible, incredible statistic. It's one thing that we have heard and I've been saying is, by closing down the Strait of Hormuz, they're also hurting themselves. Apparently that's not the case. Apparently they're able to operate in a way that we are not able to operate there at this point.
Yeah, that's right. It's really, it's just such a bad, bad situation. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.